A man, Jean Valjean, steals bread for hungry children. He gets 19 years in prison. A bishop shows him mercy. He rebuilds his life, only to spend years being hunted by a policeman who cannot accept that grace has consequences. It's hard to find a more famous 19th century novel than Victor Hugo's Les Misérables. But that is not its deepest subject. Hugo is after something harsher than redemption. He questions what kind of society calls itself civilized, while producing misery with a clear conscience. In his preface, he describes society issuing decrees of damnation through law and custom, and insists the book remains relevant as long as poverty and ignorance persist. Jean Valjean cannot be viewed as a generic tale of redemption. He is Hugo's test. Can morality survive humiliation? Valjean is branded, watched, denied work, denied dignity, reduced to a category before he is even a man. The yellow passport does more than identify him. It tells the world, and himself, how to view him. Then the bishop tears that logic apart. By forgiving Valjean for stealing his silver, he contrasts the entire moral decree the world has assigned him. And that matters, because the bishop's mercy is not softness. It is a demand. It places a burden on Valjean. Now that someone has treated you as more than your worst act, what are you going to do with that freedom? Hugo keeps the candlesticks alive in the story for a reason, for they are not decorations. They are the physical remainder of a new law entering Valjean's life. From then on, the novel becomes a series of moral tests. Fantine, Champmathieu, Cosette, Marius. Repeatedly, Valjean must choose between the safety of himself and those he cares about, and the decency of his acts. This, I think, is the book's engine. Not romance, spectacle, or revolution, but repeated moral action under pressure. Hugo keeps asking again and again, in different forms, when the world gives reason to harden, what's your next move? Fantine marks where the book is merciless. One villain does not ruin her, but by ordinary judgments. Poverty, respectability, gossip, male dominance, and the price of being an unprotected woman. Hugo's sharpest insight: social cruelty rarely looks like evil. More often, it looks normal, procedural, repetitive, in good order, done by clean hands. Fantine falls through that loophole, through a society that calls itself moral, as it, even inadvertently, destroys her. I see Javert as one of the most fascinating figures in literature, simply put, because he's not chaotic, but coherent. He believes that the law must be upheld, or the world collapses. He is the personification of the law. And the collapse indeed comes, but it is simply his. He is powerless against the moral universe. When Valjean, outside the law, acts with more integrity than the legal system most may see as corrupt, Javert cannot process it. After being spared, Hugo calls his reaction a novelty, a revolution, a catastrophe. The grace for Javert isn't sentimental. It's destabilizing to a breaking point. In my late-night thoughts about making this video, I concluded, not so surprisingly, that the novel is similar in more ways than one to Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. Hobbes fears a world without authority, a territorial, never-ending conflict of all against all, and demands a strong sovereign power to prevent it. Hugo doesn't dismiss the terror of disorder, but simply asks, what if order itself becomes indecent, up to the point of atrophy? What if the institutions that are supposed to keep the peace also degrade, shame, and discard those who cannot stand up for themselves, but are simply there? This is why the barricade matters. Not 1789, but the June 1832 uprising, after General Lamarck's death, in a Paris tense with disease, inequality, and disappointment. The men and women at the barricade believed the July monarchy betrayed the promises made in 1830. Hugo doesn't add random revolution. He's expanding his argument from the start. The novel is political long before the barricade. Fantine, Cosette, the yellow passport, the trial, all political. Even the bishop's mercy is political, interrupting a social verdict rooted in law. By the time students drag furniture into the street, Hugo is scaling up. What do you do when official order loses its moral authority? The sewer. The sewer is one of the novel's best images. Valjean carries Marius through Paris's waste, turning the city inside out. Everything respectable in life wants to be hidden down there. Consequences no one claims are down there. The sewer isn't just an adventure. It's a social truth made physical. Javert cannot survive this truth. He believes legality and morality are naturally aligned. When Valjean saves him, that alignment is shattered. The outsider is more ethically serious than the insider, and Javert has no language for it. As I mentioned before, he understands obedience, but not goodness that exceeds the law. He breaks, not from weakness, but because his worldview cannot contain mercy without breaking. So Jean Valjean's significance is not in becoming pure, but in continuing to act despite every reason not to. He repeatedly rejects the identities imposed upon him: convict, brute, stain, threat. He chooses responsibility over resentment. In this way, Les Misérables does not merely inquire whether mercy feels good. It raises the question of whether one can stay human in a world that rewards inhumanity. I think we feel that, with each passing day, the world presents coldness as intelligence. Hugo wants something harder and much simpler. A vision to see suffering clearly and still act. A moral intelligence, until the sake of freedom or another force would dictate otherwise. That, to me, is why Les Misérables still resonates. Not because it flatters us for believing in kindness or redemption. It interrogates. It asks whether we conflate order with justice, consistency with character, and legality with sheer goodness. It asks if we defer conscience to institutions and call that maturity. If a person can lose himself to immorality without ever consciously knowing it,